and they had 2.4 times the odds of being dependent on illegal sources of income. Okay, so then the flip side of that coin, well, is there any way that being on community supervision could help, right? So trying to get a sense of that, we looked at service utilization and what people got access to. And basically there's no difference. Women on community supervision were a little more likely to have had an HIV test in the past year, which is great, but in this community the prevalence among women was about 2%. So it's probably not the most important thing for them to engage in. And women who had been in the system were actually less likely to have health insurance, which surprised me, although we collected these data kind of right when Obamacare was starting to kick off. So I'm optimistic maybe that can change soon. Next slide. And again, these are multivariate models. And what these show, which is, with the exception of getting an HIV test, there's no kind of advantage accruing to women who are in the community supervision system. They weren't getting more drug treatment, they weren't getting more mental health care, they weren't getting more counseling or health insurance. So that says to me that, you know, there's no, even though in theory some benefits could accrue to this involvement, it's not happening on the ground, basically. Okay, this is my fancy slide. It's animated. Let's see if this works. So back to this idea of the intersection of corrections and community. Can you press the button, please? So my conclusion from this is that kind of all of the evidence that I was able to look at is kind of pushing people back into the correctional system, right? They're destabilized. They're less stabilized. They're not getting any facilitated access to the kinds of things that would be helpful. And obviously this isn't what we want to happen. We want to move stuff so that people can successfully move out of this area into being in the community and not having to manage all these, you know, interstitial kind of factors. Okay. So what can change? Well, obviously here, the correctional system needs to do a better job of linking people to services. And maybe that sounds like kind of crazy, like why the hell would the correctional system do that? But it's actually consistent with their goals of like reintegration and reducing recidivism. So there is kind of grounds to ask for that. There's some models where parole and probation agencies are partnering with community-based agencies. There's a place like that in San Francisco. And that may be a really good model because, you know, corrections aren't in, you know, helping people out in social work business, but a lot of other resources could be available. And then just reducing the threat that people live under of reincarceration that makes them not want to access services. And I believe all those things could happen. Okay, I'm so proud. My first animated slide. And then hopefully the benefits we see in the community are increased stability, increased safety, increased health, and people actually getting out of the system instead of perpetually being in this position where they're on parole, they're in jail, they're on probation, they're in jail, they're on probation, they're in jail, and just kind of never kind of make it out of that cycle. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marliss. Oh, sorry, I will address your slide. Is Tonya here? No, we've lost the presenter. Okay. You can talk a little longer.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Marliss Taylor. I'm the program manager at Streetworks, which is in Edmonton, Alberta, in Canada. Streetworks is the needle exchange program, and we're in our 25th year of doing that, and I've been with that program now for 20 years of it. And So we kind of stumbled into the pregnancy world, and I need to tell you, I don't like babies much. And I don't think they're cute, okay? They're kind of, so we came at it from that perspective, which is sad. Anyway, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about just sort of what the program is, but then really what I want to concentrate on is what have we learned? And then just a quick couple of slides about our evaluation. Let's go ahead. What happened is that in Edmonton in 2008 we had a syphilis outbreak, and so we had the medical officer of health for STIs needed to do something. She couldn't reach the women that were showing up and having syphilis. So we ended up partnering with them and coming up with a program we called Women in the Shadows. What we figured out is that the women were having syphilis because they weren't getting tested. Well, why aren't they getting tested when they're pregnant? Because they're not going for prenatal care. So we needed to figure out that piece. So what we really want to do is to get women the most prenatal care that they could have. This should be familiar to you in terms of who the women were that we were going to be seeing. Basically, street-involved women with 0 to 10 previous pregnancies. What we did there is that we hired 2 women who, the women weren't trusting the nurses on the team even. And we're nonprofit, we are not connected very well into children's services, but they were terrified. So we hired a couple of women who had been there, done that, who had been on the street, who had had babies while they were experiencing substance use, perhaps some violence, homelessness, all the rest of it. We taught them some nursing skills, which really pissed off the nurses, I'll tell you right now, because they really thought that they should be the ones doing this stuff. But we sent them out then to connect with women in a way that was different. We also did have a nurse that the women would come back to in the program and hopefully get some steps towards better health. So we used lots of different unconventional ways of doing things. Go ahead. The other thing that we did is we wrote a book called Oh Shit, I'm Pregnant. And I've got 20 copies here. So just if someone wants them, you can grab one if you want. But what we figured out that the women were lacking a whole piece around just education and knowledge about pregnancy. So we ended up then, the money went away. For a year we had no program, and then money appeared again. So we had something that we created a different sort of program called the Her Pregnancy Project, which is healthy, empowered, and resilient. Go ahead. The funder made a mistake on the thing. We asked for 3 years worth of funding. They thought it was per year. So anyway, we suddenly had more money than we ever thought that we'd ever have. So we got 3 pregnancy support workers, 1 registered nurse, and a social worker. And we got our funding through Safer Communities because we were able to convince people that if women were safer and healthier, violence would go down. That is a picture of some of the team right now in our office. Really, a lot of it is outreach, self-referred, no formal intake. The women develop relationships with the staff. Team provides a broad range of services, and we have had 4 babies born in our staff's cars. Okay, go ahead. Okay, so what have we learned? We learned that having women who have been from the community itself is so important. They get it. They understand what that fear and mistrust is. One of our pregnancy support workers was 14 when she was pregnant. She hid out the whole time. She gets it. She knows how tough it is. They already know the women. They have experienced discrimination themselves. And they trust professionals if our workers trust the professionals. But we do know that family ties can make it complicated. So one of our pregnancy staff, her daughter, is one of the people who's shown up in the program now. So it's a little bit of dancing around confidentiality and stuff on that. Harm reduction, of course, is critical. The women are vilified by service providers. A lot of the research is inaccurate. We are really trying to build people up and help them strive for success rather than shaming, dismissing, and punishing pregnant women. And relationship building is so important. We stay women-focused. If we have a healthy woman, we will have a healthy baby, if that's what she wants. Street-involved women are really only seen as carrying that poor little creature that's innocent, and oh, look what the terrible woman's doing to that poor innocent baby. And anyway, it's wrong. The women themselves have been victimized and abused. And we also know that At pregnancy, if you've been sexually abused in the past, it's very hard to go into an office and spread your legs open, or to go into labor and delivery and have people there. It's a very intimate and difficult time for them. We need to, of course, open, judgmental, responsive, and from a harm reduction perspective, of course we're that, but we don't have appointments. We're looking to be outside of the box. We're going with moms and attending deliveries. We're trying to work in non-traditional settings. And we have fetal heart rates. Our pregnancy support workers can do a fetal heart rate. So a woman can run in at any time that they are there, whether it's on the van or in our office, and sit and listen to that fetal heart rate. And we've had women that have run in and said, I feel like using right now, I need to hear the heartbeat. And you just go, you bet. You listen for as long as you friggin' need. We don't care. We'll get new batteries if we have to. Okay. Children's Services, this is really interesting because they were afraid. What we did though is we have a Children's Services office in our building, which is really odd, and we were afraid of them as well. But it turns out that that office gets harm reduction. And once we got the women connected early on, then they kind of knew what they needed to do in order to keep those babies. Because what happened is that, at least in Canada, right, you have no, you're not a human until the moment of birth, so Children's Services would stay away. In fact, they have some resources and they have some ways to really help the women during pregnancy. And it was really cool because the women would go in, they'd go to deliver, and they'd say, here's the card of my Children's Services worker, call her. And they'd call Nick, and Nick knew exactly what was going on and how hard she had worked for however many months. Okay. Great time to connect with non-pregnant women because the whole team does pregnancy tests, so we're able to talk about safer sex, all the rest of it. And then also for those women who decide to not go forward with the pregnancy and to terminate, that team is right there with them as well and being a support. We have stupid systems. Oh, fuck, that's what kills me. The homeless women in our province, you cannot access any sort of social assistance until the 7th month of pregnancy. And yet homeless shelters won't take women after the 2nd trimester. We all know that it's very discriminatory on who gets tested for, who gets drug testing, what babies get checked, and so lots of women who actually are looking more mainstream would never get tested anyway. And so lots of the service providers are not practicing harm reduction. They don't even get it. Okay. Post-delivery time is really difficult. For the women that want to parent, their lives have totally changed within a few months, and the service providers don't understand that, and they're not patient with that process. A lot of the women after delivery have a combination. If their child was apprehended, that's one thing. Add postpartum depression, and maybe the whole reason they were using substances was because they were depressed. So then we have a lot of missed mental health things going on. Also, if a woman's baby gets apprehended, she's just sent out after 12 hours. Then there's no grief counseling. There's nothing for her. It's really rough. And then the other part that's post-delivery is that our team has to put an endpoint on something. We've only got so many people. So we say after 6 months, they can't come back, but of course they always do. And we've got a needle exchange full of babies and toddlers and all the rest of it. But anyway, officially we can. Okay. It is very challenging for our team. It is very hard because if they have a mom who suddenly allows herself to feel hope and to work really hard and to do everything that she can, if she loses that child, then our team also is in mourning, and I have to pay attention to that as well. The team is always in advocacy mode, and they are always frustrated. Even their own families sometimes question what they do. And because our staff are from the community, they're treated sometimes with the exact same disrespect that the clients get. And that hope is incredible. The moment that woman hears that heartbeat for the first time, and I think any woman has that experience, but when you've been afraid to even acknowledge that you're pregnant because it's going to be so hard, you're pretty sure you're not going to be able to keep that baby, all the rest of it, hearing that heartbeat and doing it with someone who's supportive and saying, right on, that what can we do to support you, it's really powerful. And the pregnancy support workers show that it is possible. And then once they feel hope, then there's a lot of motivation then that comes from that. Okay, really quickly, evaluation. We did this massive evaluation. The government popped up with all kinds of money. boy, if we could have used that money for the work. But anyway, they did like 6 different things at the time, and I'm just going to show you a couple of really quick results. So this was looking at 134 pregnant women that we saw between, and anyway, they assisted with a total of 139 pregnancies. This is about 18 months that this evaluation took place. Housing was a huge issue, and this is not any surprise. And really, a homeless woman, it's very hard to parent and to be healthy and to have your child healthy. So a lot of the work that the team does is around housing. A number of the women had had a lot of pregnancies, and we just had a woman who's on her 10th pregnancy. She's not had any of her other kids, but we've had lots of women who've had multiple apprehensions, and they're parenting now, so it's really exciting. So, in terms of visits, these were women that were not accessing any prenatal care. So now, on average, if they come from the first trimester till afterwards, they're coming an average of 83 times, which is like so amazingly cool. And 53% of them have their kids right now, which is like so exciting too. The other stat that we're really excited about, though, is that for the others that are in a friend's care or adoption or whatever, 70% of those moms were a part of that process and helped decide what was going to happen with their child. Children's Services thought that probably 95 to more likely 100% of the women would have lost their kids. And then just the last little one for those that are in a conservative kind of a world, which I am living in. We had to do something called social return on investment and look at the costs. And so it said that for every dollar that they spent on the program, it saved $8.24. However, surprisingly, Children's Services had no idea what it would cost to keep a child in care. They didn't have those numbers. So we're missing that piece. So I imagine it would be much higher. Okay.
Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you.
I don't have a gift one.
No, I have a gift one. All right, you now sit on sideshow. Off the table.
Thank you. It is online at streetworks.ca.
Thank you. All right. And now we have Aura all the way from Colombia.
Hi, sorry because my English is really bad. Then I made a really heavy PowerPoint, but I want to supply my bad English with this. Then one of my problems was that when I began to study women who use heroin especially, is that I never find my friends. Like I began to find a lot of people a lot of women that were in treatment, or a lot of women that were in a really bad conditions, in a compulsive way of use. But I didn't find the people that I met, that they were using for a while, a short time or longer, and they quit. They quit because the use was incompatible with their daily life, or because they were, they wanted to quit. They wanted to do another things, and the use was incompatible with them. And I began to look for what I could find in the bibliography, and I find that there were some authors saying that it was possible to use heroin occasionally or to use it for short periods of time and quitting. It is possible to be addicted and use heroin regularly and have a structured life. In this sense, it is possible to develop mechanisms to control the compulsive use. No? And I wanted to know how were these mechanisms in these kind of people, no, that were my friends. I just want to give some concepts, just to not get lost. It's better if you read them than if I read them for you. Yeah, I just wanted to say that when we talk about temporary patterns, I'm not talking about escalate. I think that one person can go from one to another indifferently, depending of the moment of their life, and depending of the risk and protective factors that they are surrounded by. When I talk about risk factors and protection factors, I think I'm not talking about determinate factors, because one factor can be risk for one thing and protective in another moment. Maybe being women is considered a protective factor for using heroin, but not to use benzodiazepines, for example. And I wanted to introduce the feminist perspective in this kind of analysis, no? Not just talking about women in the same way that we are talking about men, but knowing about the experience of women when they, and how their experience in life interact with their drug use. I began for the idea that women have been educated in logic of security and safety, and when they relate themselves with risk behavior, they do it in a more cautelous way. No? They take more care of how they do this kind of, how they keep this kind of risk, and when they do that, they do like they work with some kind of mechanisms to protect themselves from this risk. They take the step back, but also but what's really difficult to know about this kind of experience, because these women don't take contact with any kind of programs. They don't. They are not in neither AdSense program because they don't want to be self-identified as users. Also, they hide their use from the other people because they don't want to have the label of being drug use. Also, in the studies, they don't exist because first they are women, and most of the time women are not in the studies. And also because when they are in the studies, they are because they have been in treatment and it's not their case, or because they are being in contact with other programs. Then finally, I decided to write the history of life of one of these women that I met, that she was using in a non-problematic way. She was using for mostly 2 years, not at all 18 months, I think. And she quit. She quit without any kind of treatment. She quit because she had an OD and she was totally scared. Then she decided to quit. She didn't have any kind of withdrawal anyway, or anything. Then these are her testimony all the time. It's just her. I met other women. After that, I met other women in a similar situation of her. But I think that her experience is really really interesting. One of the things that say the studies is that the people, a lot of women begin to use because the partner wants that she used, but it is not the case in most of the times that I know. She began to use because she was curious. She began with her boyfriend, but not because her boyfriend was pushing her, it was because her boyfriend give her like the safety space to use. Like she was feeling comfortable and she was feeling that she wants to try and was a good moment and he was with a good company to do it. In that sense, I want to break this image that the bibliography says about women, that they are like really passive and influenced. No, they are strong, they want to use, they decide to use. They take, and yeah, like she said, no, he didn't like that I was trying it because he wasn't comfortable using heroin. He was addicted, like he wanted to quit, but he couldn't. Like, he wasn't who pushed her. She was seeing that and was like, okay, I want to try. Anyway, when the women begin to use, they begin to use like taking some kind of harm reduction strategies. Like they use in a more moderate way, they use in a more discreet way also, and they use with smaller doses. And I think that all these kind of harm reduction strategies that they use more conscious or not conscious are really interesting, especially if we want to have some kind of programs directed to them, no? And we need to use the tools that they have. We don't need to give them some tools that they are already using. I began smoking, making chinos. I don't know if you say chinos here. It's like just smoking the heroin. In small doses, I always use a little because drugs affect me a lot. I feel them really fast. I don't need too much quality. I was using for a year and a half. At the end, I was injecting, but not by necessity or wanting more, but because I wanted to try it. Because in that moment, my boyfriend was injecting himself from a long time ago. I saw it and I wanted to try it. See it and try it. I was curious, but I liked to smoke better. I was not using for a long time, injecting 9 months, but usually more, and not every day at all. She didn't use every day because she didn't want to become more addicted. That she was feeling that she was crossing the line. She just wanted to play with this, in that sense. It's true that when she began to ingest, she became like kind of scared with herself because she wasn't sure if she will be able to control that in that way. Then, and she was really conscious about all her process. Like, I was pretty strong step for me. I was feeling that I was risking myself because I was too good, and the vein is another history. Already, pricking your body, I did not feel very comfortable. I was doing it as a vice. First time, I did it because I was curious, but after because of pleasure of the show. It is incredible. It's pretty cool, So it's very easy to get hooked. But I realized that it was a dangerous area. Red. By my nature, I am very busy, and I like a lot. Then there are different strategies to control the use and maintain it in a moderate way. She has a routine. She was a circus artist, professional circus artist, and for her to maintain the two things were it's like two different phases of really difficult to make it compatible. And it was one of the main points that maintained her use really controlled. Also not using every day, and she didn't know how to buy. Her boyfriend was buying for her. She didn't make contact with all the street use. She was using just at home, and also she was really, really careful to don't be labeled as user. Her boyfriend was using a lot of, he knew a lot about naloxone and what to do, the prevention, and she always was using with him. Then she was a kind of safe in that sense. Also, to don't be part of
based organizations that have an inspiring model that you could share. And one interest, of course, for me is street-based nurses. Like whether or not you've heard of any nurses that are on the street that are walking.
Yeah, on our program, so we have two. What I forgot to mention is that we got refunded for 3 more years, and they've added an extra nurse and an extra pregnancy support workers. So our nurses will go behind a dumpster where someone's smoking crack and do a fetal heart rate on the crack, right? All of that is just so important, and it's so much to build the trust. In terms of models, we kind of, because it was about syphilis, we sort of made up our own. Having said that now, starting to get connected with other programs, particularly in Canada, but also some in the States, that have done some really cool work, and you know, Vancouver being one, but there are others as well. Maybe you and I could talk.
Yeah, maybe I'll just chat with you afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I have another question. About the mandated reporting, I don't know what's like in Canada, but I know if you're an RN and like our program, we do have nurses that go out and you see situations where there's children or pregnant people that are using. How does that work with the mandated reporting on if you know your mandated reporter and you see something that could put somebody at risk on how to deal with that? Because I know bringing child protective services in can be really devastating.
Yeah, and you know what? A lot of the women we already have a relationship with, and the team is pretty clear that sometimes they have no choice on this one, and so the women know that. What would happen is that sometimes Children's Services will come to us and say, we heard so-and-so is smoking crack or whatever it is, and the team will be all panicked, and I'll go, did you see her smoking crack? Like, did you see her, or is it a rumor? And like, oh, well, no, I didn't see her. Then okay, you are. But however, we've also had the team very concerned sometimes that there's a little one that's in a really bad spot right now, and so then they try and get the mom actually to go and talk to Nick first. If they can't, then sometimes we do report, and the moms know that we have to do that. And it's in the end, a lot of times actually they're kind of grateful because they were pretty worried about their little one too. But we don't take that decision very lightly, and they're not allowed to go to Children's Services without talking to me first.
Yeah, I think just my experience as well in the UK, in the student exchange I worked there, is, you know, you're faced ultimately with that decision about what's best for the child at that point. One of the things I'm sure you do, Marissa, is you make sure that the support is even greater.
Yeah.
You go with them, you're there for them through that process of being involved with Child Protective Services to try and optimise the outcome for mother and child at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Our goal would be to keep a family intact. We have kids that have been in 35 or 40 foster homes by the time they're 15. Oh my God, that's state abuse right there. So the more we can keep the family together, the better.
I had a question for Jennifer, if no one else. Jennifer, what is next with your research? Where do you hope to go next with it? Use it to influence.
Well, I've started another study in Oakland that focuses specifically on women in criminal justice involvement. It's also a community-based study. And what we're trying to do, because criminal justice involvement isn't like you get busted, you go to jail, you go on probation, and then you're free. It's a cycle that people are in and out of, due to the policies of the war on drugs, lots of people for like a big chunk of their adult life. So we're trying to look at patterns of criminal justice involvement and how that impacts health disparities. So we're kind of getting away from this HIV focus, which makes me so happy, and looking at the problems that women actually have. We've talked about 100 women so far, and it's arthritis, chronic pain, high blood pressure, diabetes. It's predominantly African American community. And so my hope is that we can kind of tease out like how criminal justice involvement over the life course it correlates with health over the life course, and use that, to advocate for, well, really, ultimately just decriminalization. Like whatever step we can get to on the way.
Okay, so here and then we'll come down.
I have two things. First, for your research, the women on parole and thinking about early women and children, how did the parole impact the child care? If they did have children, how many did any of the participants have children? Were they pregnant during that time? Is the difference in their use or citizen? And then for Ara, how did you get the women to get their study to improve your partner? How did you get them to come out of the woodwork, essentially?
For the new study I was mentioning, we've seen about 100 women, and we do ask questions about children and grandchildren and involvement with CPS. And it's really, there's a range. I mean, most of the women are like probably in their 40s and some in their 50s. Most of them have had kids, and there's a range. I mean, some of them raise their kids, some of them, their kids are with family members. But CPS involvement is not uncommon. I mean, probably half the women I've spoken with who had kids also had some form of CPS involvement. So it's tough, you know, it's tough for people to talk about. It's just really heartbreaking.
She was a friend of mine. I began to ask around, and finally I find her. Like, she didn't talk about that normally, but when she knew that I was looking for that, she began to talk with me with a lot of wine and sharing experiences and dinners.
My question, I'm sorry, I have to be
Jennifer.
Jennifer, thank you. Did you see any difference between individuals that were also involved with community-based organizations? And we're all, you know what I'm asking, like the support of being involved in a community-based organization and being known and having advocates and people of accompaniment in the community working with accompanying them as they navigate the system. What were the differences?
Well, unfortunately, there's not a lot of that available in Oakland, although this study did have, and she's presenting tomorrow at 11, like totally kick-ass case management component, specifically for people with HIV. But it was about keeping, all of whom actually were triply diagnosed, but it was about keeping, helping them stabilize and helping them either get on or stick with their HIV treatment while caught in this perpetual cycle of reincarceration and homelessness, probation and reincarceration. And our case manager, Christina, did a really fantastic job, and there's a ton of interesting stuff that's come out from that. I think one of the most important findings, and maybe it's not that surprising, but she's like really talented and really well educated and really well spoken, and she had like hell of a time getting people through systems. So this concept that, you know, well, help's available, you should just go get it, is completely insane because people are really destabilized, you know. And there's been a lot of collateral damage, like when one system helps and then the other system, it sets the other system off its axis, and then that other system will start like screwing with people, right? I mean, it's very complex.
So you didn't see any community-based organizations in Oakland that are just accompanying people as they navigate the systems at large?
No, and that, I totally would love that to happen.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, why do you have to have HIV to get help? People with HIV deserve help, but so do people with other things, you know.
Can I just say a quick word, just really quickly about the book? So if you want to find it, it's at streetworks.ca, now CA for Canada. It turns out there's a couple of programs in the States that are called Streetworks as well. So anyhow, the book, though, is one we often do resource development in our program. We write it with a group of community members. So this was with one nurse with a group of women who had never talked about how painful it was to lose their kids, what shame they felt, how much they believed the media about themselves. It was very interesting. And normally we would write a book that has a character through it, so that we have stories and it's funny. And this one, we couldn't have a character at the end because she may have lost her baby, right? So instead what we did is we had Andrea do it. And Andrea is this little blonde religious nurse who just like, honestly, just not street at all. But she took what she heard through all of those very, very difficult meetings and she wrote poems. And so there's poems throughout here. I just want to read one. So she's got, what she heard was, he knows I'm pregnant. I told him last night. He doesn't think it's his. I'm sure it is. He told me to quit using while he sat there and lit up. Is he going to leave me? He said he wouldn't. Will he stop hitting me? He said he would. And so she's taken what she heard and put them through there. And in many ways, this book is my favorite out of all of them. We've done 9. Currently, though, we're just working on, oh shit, I'm a parent. So there's a
We could all use that book.
Actually, that connects to a question I had about what kind of follow-up are you doing in terms of parenting with the women after it?
Well, after we start trying to help them trust parenting programs that we trust, right? Because there are some parenting programs out there that are really not the least bit appropriate when people have no freaking clue what it's like.
Right.
And so we're trying to get women, transition people to people who can, we're no parenting experts, trying to help them move to a spot where whatever support they need, that they can get. A lot of them don't have family support or healthy families around them. They're all alone, they're painfully lonely. And so, because they're in an apartment for the first time, they've got this kid that they didn't actually expect to have, but they love it, or him or her. Telling me to. And so their life has changed so much. But so it is good if they have someone, but it's got to be someone appropriate.
I'm going to plug a parenting program that I used in the UK, and we're looking at it in the US as well, with some of the programs I work with. It's called the Webster Stratton Parenting Program. It's called The Incredible Years. And I used it with women who are their children who'd experienced domestic abuse in the UK. But it's actually out of Seattle. So if people are interested in looking for a really good parenting program that also trains people as group leaders, I'm a trained group leader in it, that comes from a really non-judgmental approach and doesn't stigmatize people any further. And I love it, the fact that it's called Incredible Years, right? It's not about toddler-taming or any of that, or telling you you're a shit parent, right? It's about saying, you know, this, because none of us come with a blueprint, right? And when I went through the group trainer, I was like, I wish I'd had this when my kid was 2, because he was a bit older at that point. But yeah, so that's just something for people who are interested in parenting stuff. And they are based in Seattle, and they do have trainings. You can host trainings for them to come out and do as well. So
The Incredible Years?
yeah, it's called The Incredible Years. Yeah, and they have a website. And just another question at the back? Yeah.
Similar about follow-up for the women who children. Is there a follow-up for that?
So the question is the kind of follow-up for the women that can't keep their children?
Yeah, you know what, because our office is so free-flowing and women can come into our office for any reason, we have other programs on overdose prevention with naloxone, all that sort of thing. But they tend to stay in touch, which is nice because I think before they just went off into the shadows and were kind of lost. We have found that a lot of them do, but some don't. And Edmonton is large enough, but also small enough that we can ask around. And who's seen Susie? We're kind of worried about her, and then person, we can hear through the grapevine. Sometimes, though, we just had one of our monks who died of an overdose, and I think it was an intentional overdose, and her little one, because her little one had been taken away. And that just kills the team. Never mind how hard it was for that woman's family.
Yeah.
Question for Marliss. You mentioned that the research on pregnancy and drug use is inaccurate. Can you just elaborate on that?
Well, it's that whole bit. We still have so many even healthcare providers that believe that crack is going to cause this kind of a result in a newborn, or crystal meth, or all of those assumptions that from people who were taught by media, really, and not science. So we're still battling a lot of that, and because so much research is coming from the perspective of, I want to see what the effects of crack are. Let's say, use that as an example, as opposed to, here is a baby with some issues. What's causing those issues, right? They're going in with the idea that it's got to be the drug, obviously.
Oh, we heard that there was a workshop this morning where that was also alluded to, the inaccuracy of the data. The one this morning that some of us were in misinformation, stigma of reproductive rights. So yeah.
National Association of Pregnant Women is doing some great counter media about that stuff.
There was also a study done in Sweden a few years ago, and what they did is they had healthcare providers, a maternity ward with the babies, and the healthcare providers had to say which of those babies they believed had been drug affected. And then they went and talked to the moms privately, said, okay, good. And the healthcare staff were right 7% of the time. But don't we all know that, working in our profession, right?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, there's one of the organizations that has trained me. I do, one of the things I do is work with women postpartum. The group that I run is for women with children who are 0 to age 5. But the organization is Mother Woman, and it's based in Western Massachusetts. And they work to empower women to make positive choices, to build community safety nets. They impact family policy. They look for paid sick leave. I mean, they're kind of doing a lot of work at the policy level, but also they just do group trainings, and so you could have your organization train facilitators, and really, they have a model, they have a book that they use, and basically I run a support group, and it's free, and we provide childcare and snacks to women, and it's not geared towards a particular kind of women or drug using women, but that's how I choose to use it and how I want to use it. So any organization can kind of provide it. It's a safe space, a non-judgmental space where women can just speak the truth of what their mothering is. And I'm not a mandatory reporter. Anybody can get the training, and it just having a safe space where people can speak and talk about and be around other mothers who are in a similar life has been really powerful.
Yes.
Just to follow up again, Patrick had asked about what happens to the women where their children are apprehended. And the team keeps working with them, and a lot of times it's trying to convince Children's Services that they were wrong. And so it's not that they don't have their baby, so they're out of our program. The connection stays on and on. And a lot of the times, like sometimes 2 years later, our team's like, I just got to go out to a court date with her. Okay, go. Do what you need to.
So do you find you're able to kind of maintain hope with them through the support that they get for you, that they can kind of regain
But it's
custody?
tough because a lot of the women in the past have dealt with those emotional challenges through using, and it makes it tough, right? But boy, really strong women who are doing amazing things. So.
Okay, we still have a little time if you have, yes.
I was wondering if there's anything especially about women being pressed out care that happens to them. Yes.
Could you repeat the question? We didn't quite catch all of that though. I want to make sure we caught all of what you asked.
Sometimes women have postpartum depression, and especially what we do for that is sort of more services in Edmonton for women. So.
Half the battle is figuring out what's going on. If you have your baby taken away, of course, people are depressed. If you are using drugs because you were depressed since you were 12, that's another issue. Add postpartum onto it. We're finding that it's not been, because women, especially if they lost their kids, would just disappear and they wouldn't be going in for any checkups, of course, or anything. It was getting missed a lot, and I think women were coping with it by increasing their own substances, whatever it was, to try and cope with that. I can't say we have any magic bullet, but we're always doing now like an Edinburgh depression scale and trying to do things as we stay in touch with the women, and then try and get them some support for that, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Have you used postpartum doulas or used?
No.
And is there like a network of them that?
Yeah, there's doulas around, and there's lots that offer, but you know what, the women are so untrusting, and because they're so street involved, I'm very, probably wrongly protective of them, but I don't, if they ask for one, we get them one, but I think they are just so comfortable right now with our pregnancy support workers. I'm just leaving it at that.
Can I just ask what the demographics of Edmonton is like? What's the population made up?
So mostly who our team would be seeing, they're seeing about 85% women of Aboriginal descent, actually.
Okay.
Yeah, there are a few women that would be European, Caucasian background, a few women of Latino or African Caribbean descent. But mostly there, the most marginalized group, the group that's the most oppressed are Aboriginal people. And so that's who.
And are most of these women homeless, or is it not? Because Edmonton's cold, right?
Oh, yes.
It's a cool place. I mean, I grew up in Minnesota, so I know cold
Yeah, I know, isn't that fascinating that when it's -40, a shelter will say no to a pregnant
Yeah.
woman? I
Well,
cannot, it sounds.
Well, there's no service, I mean, it's maddening to me, I mean, it makes me want to cry all the time, but, that there's nothing for women. I know in San Francisco, there's not one shelter where women can go down and lay down. And most of the women we serve are of that age, about 35 to maybe 55, and when you're of that age and you're not married and all those kind of things, there's a lot of things going on. And there's no place for a woman to lay down unless she's been beaten up. And it's maddening that there's no services.
Well, and even an experience that perhaps you haven't had, and I certainly haven't had, is being pregnant and you know, having a full bladder at the start of pregnancy and then at the end, and being on a mat that this big if you do get in somewhere and you're up and down, or you're trying to pee outside. And,
Yeah, our shelters don't take women that are, I think, after this second trimester. And then, no, they don't, not San Francisco, and they don't take children either. You have to be like really running from somebody who wants to kill you, or
No children? No shelters?
no, there's no shelter children. There's a special one for women and children, but it's not big, it's small, and you can't, you're using door gets shut. It's unbelievable.
It's the same, I think, for a lot of children, ones you still have to be like fleet violence.
Yeah, fleet violence.
I would say that in Canada, our homeless folks are very good at camping. And we don't, as much as you probably think it's cold, it gets fucking cold, I'm telling you. But our, like, the amount of death we have related to winter or snow-related emergencies is not as much as you would think. Certainly you have lots of frostbite and frostnip and people have to walk all day. Actually have to walk all night, so they don't freeze to death and try to find a place to sleep all day. And so it's definitely a thing.
but maybe a couple of people a year, which is terrible to say. That's only a couple of people a year goes to that.
Okay. Any more questions? Well, thank you.
I have one more question.
I want it.